Hello, everybody. I don't know why it does that. Welcome back to Mordor Depths of Dejenol Tips and Tricks. I'm Mithral Zenith, and I'll be your guide in figuring out how to play this crazy game. Today's episode will be focusing on the different races and classes, what makes each one good, what makes each one bad, and which one you should probably pick if you're starting out, if you're creating a party, or if you're going it alone. What better way to do this than to hop into the character creator and then just look at them down the list. Let's start with the races. So not all races in Mordor are created equal. Humans are very well-rounded. They have decent stats, although nothing fantastic. They can, however, the good part about a human is that they can be any alignment, and they can be any class that their alignment can be, and if we go into the race stats, if my game doesn't crash when I do this, their experience modifier is 3, which means they level up exceedingly fast compared to pretty much every other race. The only one that comes close is Morlock, and we'll get to Morlocks later. So should you play a human? Generally, I don't think they're all that bad. I mean, their relatively low max stats keep them, well, can limit them in some ways. And because they only start with 5 stat points above their average, you can't join too many guilds right at the start if they're a starter character. But for a legacy character, which is, I'll talk about that later, but it's a character where you power them up using items and stuff from previous characters so they can start very strong, which is generally the best way to play a character if you want them to be able to easily succeed in the long term, or especially if you want them to follow the optimal leveling route at all, which we'll get to. So, yeah, more humans, not bad starting characters, but they're a lot better legacy-wise. As for what classes to make them, again, they can fit pretty much any niche you need. One thing to note is that humans and trolls are the only races that have access to the ninja class. The only races that can be ninjas. So if you want a ninja for all those extra swings, you're probably going to want a human. Unless you don't mind having the second slowest leveling character outside of an Osiri healer. And again, we'll get to that later. Elf. I have an elf, a solo elf. It's fun. Elves have a few problems. First of all, their strength, natural strength cap is 15. This means that boosted, their innate strength cap is 20. This means that they can't wield some of the strongest weapons in the game, including the Holy Avenger, the Holy Sword, whatever it's called in this game. Just something to think about. Also, it's not visible in this freaking chart. Oh, here it is. Yes, humans are normal size. Elves are small. This doesn't matter too much, but it is a matter of they'll receive more damage when they get hit, and they'll deal less damage when they do hit. The bigger you are than something, you raise your damage by like... Well, there's a 0.1 modifier somewhere in the damage calculation, which I'm not going to go into right now, which says, okay, every size category you're bigger than something, you deal 0.1 modifier damage more, and it deals 0.1 modifier damage less to you, and you deal more to it. So elves, being size small, generally don't deal as much damage in melee combat. Humans are normal, so they deal reasonable amounts to most things. I feel like it also affects what companions they can carry, though I might be wrong on that. Oh, another thing to note about humans is that they have no natural resistances. Humans have no natural resistances, which in the long term doesn't matter too much, but in the short term, especially if you don't have a sorcerer in your party or aren't abusing potions, you're going to feel that. You're going to feel that quite a bit early on. Elves do come packed with some nice resistances. They have an 80%... what's G? Is G magic? Pretty sure it's magic. Oh, no, that's not right. Yes, they have an 80% magic resistance and 50% mind resistance, which means they are hit a lot less hard by monsters like enchanters early on. Although, late in the dungeon, you will want to boost those with items or spells, if possible. As far as guilds, elves have the highest natural intelligence and wisdom, so they can join spellcasting guilds and succeed really well in them. As far as fighting guilds, though, you're really limited to Paladin and maybe Scavenger. If you're not good aligned, Scavenger will be your only way, your only option to get multiple hits. And even then, Scavenger gets them slower than any other class, which actually gets them. Yeah, so elves, not that great. Their low constitution also means that they won't gain many hit points early on, even if you're doing optimal leveling. So, yeah, they're fragile. They don't hit very hard in melee. But they have a lot of spell points. 250 cap. Oh, another thing I should probably mention is that humans, their maximum age is 100. And in this game, if you're basically almost at your maximum age, you have a chance of just dying of old age. And the closer you are to your max age, the bigger chance of having complications when you get raised. So humans, even at 16, the starting age, will have complications very quickly. Elves, with the highest age of 400, won't have complications very often when... Well, I guess it's when you fail a raise you have complications. Yeah, elves don't have complications very often. And it'll take a long time for them to die, so generally you won't have to worry about aging until you start getting really deep in the dungeon and facing monsters with aging attacks. As far as experience, they're the same as a lot of other classes with the 7 modifiers, so they level pretty slowly, but it's not that big of a deal, all things considered. With so many spell points, they're able to spam spells really easily, and that helps them speed up leveling. As far as what classes you should be, again, if you're playing an elf, the whole reason you're playing an elf is to go for high spellcasting classes. I mean, you can maybe do Paladin if you want, or I guess you could be a thief, although there are better thieves out there. But if you're going an elf, seriously go spellcasting. As far as the optimal leveling route is concerned, however, which, watch another video, talk more about that, yeah, you're pretty much limited to Nomad into Wizard as the best thing you can get. You don't have the Warrior group. But all things considered, that's... Let's see, that would be about 28 hit points you're missing out on over just going Nomad to 30, so... You know, it matters. It doesn't matter a whole lot. Yeah, that's elves. Giants. Oh, giants. When you see this, what do you think? What do you notice first about giants? That their base stats allow them to get into warrior no problem? Maybe. That they have a 25 natural strength cap, which means 30 boosted strength cap. Probably. That even their intelligence, wisdom, and charisma don't suck too much comparatively. Yeah. Yeah, giants be good. What classes can they join, though? Warrior and Seeker. Now, this isn't the worst class restriction. We'll get to that when we talk about ogres. And in fact, it actually pairs pretty well because Seeker gives you a way to spend your spell points that in a way that helps the party by casting movement spells and location spells and some resistances too. While Warrior is just the best fighting class, pretty much in general. They can use any weapon they can get their hands on. They are big, they're beefy, they deal more damage than any other class race combo in the game. And they're always neutral, so they can join pretty much any party. Giants are a solid pick for a first-time character, or for any party. You can't really go wrong with a Giant Warrior. Giant Warrior Seeker is one of the most classic Mordor combos. It just works. As far as other things, yeah, they experience a 7, but they'll be leveling fast because they deal a lot of damage. Age is 225, don't worry about that too much. Resistance is... well, they're very big size, so again, they take less damage and dish out more damage than any other race, and they have 50% resistance to almost everything. Only resistances they don't have are Mind, Magic, and Acid. You know, these don't matter too much in the long run. Again, you'll be wanting items or spells for the most part, but early on it helps them out quite a bit. Gnomes. What can a gnome do? What is a gnome? Apparently they only have 40% mind resist, so that's not very good. Apparently they're normal size though, and elves are small, so I don't know what to make of that. Gnomes are a weird race. They can join Paladin, Villain, if they're evil. Their only choices for combat guilds, really, for getting multiple swings are Paladin and Scavenger, and their best fighting guilds are Paladin, Villain, Scavenger. Honestly, though, what do gnomes have? You know, decent intelligence and wisdom, and fantastic charisma. Charisma doesn't matter all too much, all things considered, but it does make them pretty effective mages with charm spells. Their companions won't be quite as likely to leave, and they'll even have a really high rate of just having monsters want to join them, naturally. Now, what are the problems about being a gnome? Honestly, your guild selection isn't that great. Outside of a couple magic guilds, you can't even join wizard. And that is a huge restriction because it means that they can't do any optimal leveling route outside of just getting Nomad to 30. They don't have wizard to boost them up. So that hurts them long term. That really does hurt them long term. And the fact that all their stats are so wonky means that generally they work best as legacy characters. Anyway? Yeah, gnomes are weird. You don't need a gnome, but they're fun. They can fill in some interesting gaps. A gnome paladin mage or villain mage can be interesting, but a non-good gnome will have to rely on the scavenger class if they want more extra swings in melee. Dwarves. Dwarves are another weird all-rounder class, kind of like humans. Consider dwarves as better humans, but only able to be neutral. and that influences a surprising number of things. Experience-wise, they level a little slower than humans, but they have only a 5 modifier, so that's pretty good. Age-wise, they can live to 275. Stat-wise, everything's at least a 17, except for Charisma, which the majority of the time doesn't matter too much, unless you really are worried about companions leaving you. Surprisingly good Intelligence and Wisdom. Wisdom and Constitution at 19. Yeah, pretty good. Dwarves can pretty much make good whatever classes they can join. They have Warrior and Wizard, so they can do the optimal leveling route, and with 19 Constitution they do it quite well. If you want to make a Warrior, Dwarves are alright. Dedicated Warriors, Giants are best, but, Dwarves aren't too bad. Their small size, though, will get in the way of them dealing quite as much damage. Look at their resistances, though. 80% cold resist, 50s, 40s here. 90% drain resist. That's as much as you would get from an item which gives drain resist. So, unless you're really worried about draining and want to cast a spell on them, you don't have to worry about dwarves getting drained. Which is a really nice thing, especially if you're starting out. The stats dwarves have, look, sure they have lowish starting stats looking, but they start with 10 extra stat points. They can be majority of their options quite easily, quite quickly. They have good intelligence and wisdom. Dwarves are just really, really solid. Dwarf Thief, Warrior, Dwarf Healer. Heck, even a Dwarf Sorcerer wouldn't be too bad. They have a good mix of both physical and magical classes. And while they don't have everything, they have enough. Oh boy, do they have plenty enough. Dwarves are good. Make dwarves. I never used to make dwarves, and I've since learned that dwarves are very good. Ogres. The counterpart to giants. Almost said dragons. That is not accurate whatsoever. They have 75% in a lot of key resistances. Fire, cold, draining, stoning. Where's H stoning? I forget which one's what. H is stone. 50% stone, so 75 paralysis and drain. So, by that point you'll normally be casting spells on yourself for resistances, but they're not bad. Highest natural constitution of anyone, so they'll gain the most hit points early on. But the problem is they can only be Warrior Scavenger. And their strength compared to giants, it's 20, which is really good, but giants have 25. Ogres would be decent if giants didn't exist. As it stands, one thing ogres have that giants don't is access to the Scavenger class, which means access to a reasonably cheap charm of opening. Ogres, I would not recommend as legacy characters. They don't tend to scale well into the late game. But for a starting character, ogres can be pretty nice. Having access to both Warrior and Scavenger, they're good at clearing out the early levels of the dungeon, and can even open up those locked chests. For this build of Mordor, for this install, I started with an Ogre Warrior Scavenger, and it went pretty well. I was able to kit out the rest of my legacy characters quite easily just with that mix. Yeah. For running the first couple levels, ogres are quite good. Anything past that, though, and they're going to have a hard time, so you probably will want a giant instead. Morlock. How do I put this delicately? Don't make a Morlock. Any questions? Okay, seriously though. What is up with these stats? 20 strength, 20 dex, 15 constitution, 14 charisma. Morlocks can't get hardly any bonus hit points. They hardly ever keep around companions. What classes can they join? Mage with their 14 charisma. Can they even cast what is it called? Soul entrapment? Maybe if they max out. I think it's like 18 maybe. But if it's like 20, then they can't cast it. Yeah. They can join warrior, but they can't join wizard, so optimal leveling route. And optimal leveling wouldn't even help them that much because, again, their constitution's so low. I don't understand the point of Morlocks. Why would you play a Morlock? Like, what are even their other stats? Sure, their resistances are decent. They have 95% natural paralysis resistance. It's the best thing I've said about Morlocks all day. It's the best thing they have going for them. What about their age? 175, that's barely more than humans. Experience 4, that's a little slower than humans. Yeah, don't play a Morlock unless for some reason you really hate casting resist paralysis. Don't play a Morlock. Why do these things exist? Osiri. Now, Osiri are interesting. First of all, they have 90% resistances and things other classes generally don't have anything in. Electrical and mind. As well as stoning and acid. Osiris have those really weird but really good resistances. Osiris can age to 325, second oldest in the game. Osiris are kind of like half-elves, if you consider that. In lore, at least. They're weird. Stat-wise, not bad. Little low on strength and wisdom, but look at that dexterity. Amazing dexterity. However, now we get to the negatives. Look at that experience gain. 8. Second highest modifier. Osiris level slow. I mean slow. Osiris level super slow. Osiris are locked into neutral, which means they can't access a couple important classes. Osiris cannot be warriors, which limits their optimal leveling route and really limits their fighting ability. In fact, the only class which gets even slightly better fighting ability than Nomads, their only class which gives them multiple swings, is Scavenger. Freaking Scavenger. That said, there is something charming about an Osiri thief. They will have the highest dex of any character in the game. They can open locks, traps. I keep saying locks. They are very good at disarming traps. And their other stats are reasonable. The only problem is that they will level slower than any other thief in the game, pretty much. Unless, I don't even know if trolls can be thieves. We'll get to them later. Osiris are interesting. You can also make an Osiri healer right from the start. I think that's the only character type that can be a healer without being a legacy character right from level 1. But an Osiri healer, interesting to note because of healer stats, which we'll get to later, is the slowest leveling class in the game. Class race combination. They require more experience points to level up than any other combo in the game, as far as I've found. Maybe you could be a troll healer, I don't know. Again, we'll get to trolls later. They're slow. For starting characters, they're really good. Don't get me wrong, they're insanely good starting characters. Starting thief, starting a healer, you don't need legacy. Just roll a freaking Osiri. Osiri healer, Osiri thief. They are really good for starting out. Later on, though, you're generally going to want your healer to be something more like a dwarf, so they don't take a million experience to level up, and I'm not joking, it gets really high really fast. And an Osiri thief will fall behind in fighting ability quite quickly without access to warrior and with only access to scavenger, which, if you're already leveling thief, majority of scavenger is going to waste because you aren't getting any extra thieving ability from it. Osiris are weird. They're really good starter characters, but late game they tend to fall off. Sheerly because of their classes and not having access to warrior. I think that's the biggest pain, the biggest loss to playing an Osiri is that they can't access warrior, and that they level too slow. Trolls. Okay. End of the line, everybody off. Trolls have good stats. They just do. Nothing lower than a 17, and that 17's in charisma. Trolls have decent age. They can get to 265. Troll resistances, they're alright. Again, resistances don't matter too much, but they have a couple cool ones, like, what's F? Oh, poison. Yeah, that's not cool. 65 disease resist, and drain resist. 45 paralysis, they're not bad. And now we've just said all the best things about trolls. Why would you not play a troll, you ask? Well, they don't have access to warrior or wizard, meaning, you're just gonna level Nomad for 30 levels, and then that's as many hit points as you're gonna get. They are extremely limited in what classes they can be. Again, this is the ogre problem. You could have a troll thief, but then what else can you be? A scavenger? Pointless. Nearly pointless, unless you want to level to 550 for 2 extra swings. Which, I've never had a character even break 200 yet, so 550 is kind of insane. If you want to be an evil troll, or even a good troll, you have access to ninja. The only other race outside of human, which has that. But troll ninjas, compared to human ninjas, level at roughly like half the pace. It's insanely slow. What else are you going to be? A villain? Villain's a weird class, and we'll talk about that later. Yeah. Trolls. Trolls are weird. Trolls are tempting to play. Trolls are something to think about. But honestly, just sheerly on the fact that A, they don't have any magic using classes whatsoever. Their best magic user is Villain, who barely gets poison and leprosy, and at so high levels that they cost way too many stat points to use. Spell points. And B, that they don't even have any good fighting classes outside of Ninja. Means that all your troll is going to be good for is being a ninja or a thief. And if you're doing a dedicated thief, Osiris do it better. Yeah, trolls, don't play trolls. That's the problem with trolls. Every time I click that, it always does the background in reverse. Whatever. yes, that's the races. That's a rundown of the races. If you want my picks for good races, honestly, you can't go wrong with dwarves. Dwarves can fill out a majority of your basic party needs. Really can't go wrong with a giant warrior seeker. I mean, you don't have magic ability, but who cares when you're smashing everything with incredible damage? Osiris, pretty good thieves and healers, but they level extremely slow, especially Osiris healers. Again, don't take that for granted. Osiris healer's slowest leveling class race combo in the game. By a decent margin. Never play Morlocks. Pretty much never play Trolls. Only play Ogres early game. Gnomes and Elves are interesting, though you don't need them. They're pretty cool if you want a spellcaster with decent fighting ability. But if you want a well-rounded character, pick Dwarf or Human. And humans, honestly, if you ever have any intense desire to play a weird class combo, pick a human. It's how it is in role-playing games. Humans, multi-class however you want. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Humans are the well-roundeds, and they level decently quickly in anything. Human Nomad, don't even need to say it, fastest leveling class in the game. Class race combo. Not that it really matters much, because it's only Nomad, but it's something. Now for the guilds. What guild should my character be? Well, everyone has access to Nomad. A good number of classes have access to Warrior. Paladin is... okay, let me just talk about specialized classes for a second. The more specialized a class is, the better it is, generally, at that thing. Warriors, for instance, are the most specialized in fighting. So they get extra swings decently fast. They get critical hit much faster than everyone else. And you should know that these numbers are kind of exponential in their equations, so that even though you might think, oh, 12's not too much higher than a 10, it's so much better. It is so much better. Yeah, warriors will get the best fighting skill, which I think translates to attack defense. Warriors gain the best hit points per level, which is insanely good, until they hit 28, and then they fall off. They are tied for lowest perception ability with Sorcerer, Wizard, and Healer. So, balance out your Warrior with a Seeker for good perception. Hey, you have a Giant right there. Giant Warrior Seeker. That's a big reason why it's a classic combo. Warrior is just really good. You can't really go wrong with a Warrior. Nomad, you get Charm of Opening eventually, but even then, you get it so late that you're only going to be able to cast it like once per dungeon run. And that's if you're not casting any other spells in that run. I mean, Nomads are decent. They have decent fighting ability, so if your race doesn't have access to any other fighting classes, Nomad's not bad. What Nomads do have is that, well, first of all, they're the fastest leveling class in the game, with a experience parameter of 8. Yeah, they're the fastest leveling class by far in the game. It's insane how fast they level up, how little experience they need. And they get decent hits all the way up to 30. They get 5 hits per level up to level 30. That right there is the reason why the game recommends that before you join another guild, you level to 30 as Nomad. right there. Average hits. That's all you need to know. And another big thing to note is that Nomads gain items at the fastest level of anyone. They get access to items sometimes almost twice as quickly as even Warriors, who are like the second quickest. They're very good, especially at getting up to non-class restricted item levels. For instance, a Nomad at high enough level, like level 19 Nomad, gets you access to Steel Daggers, the first 2-hit, non-class restricted weapon in the game, and which will generally be your weapon of choice until you get to a pretty high level, or until you get to dungeon level 6, around the time when they stop working. Nomad's pretty good. Now the problem with Nomads is that they only get 1 hit point per level after 30, compared to any other classes 2. They're going to be seriously hurting for hit points if they're the class you continue to level primarily in. But as a supporting class, Nomad's pretty good. Paladin. Okay, Warrior, we talked about Warrior. Average hits of 6 to level 28. This is the reason the OLR exists, the optimal leveling route. Is that you level to Warrior to 28, level to Nomad to 30 if you really want those extra couple hit points, and level to Wizard to 41, which we'll get to when we talk about Wizard. And I'll do a whole video on the OLR. Warriors get so many hit points. Warriors get the best fighting skill. Warriors have a decent experience parameter, so they don't level too slowly. And their stats aren't too bad to join. The required stats, very reasonable. And they can be any alignment. Again, Warriors, for being the dedicated fighting skill class, quite good. And they don't get weapons that slower than Nomad. But like I said, Nomad will get them like a third as fast. So it's like a level 30 Nomad item would be like a level 40 something Warrior item, I think is how it calculates out to be. Something like that. Paladins. Paladins are only a little worse than Warriors. The Paladin has 5 average hits to 29, so it's basically like a Nomad there. Experience parameter is 19, so that's a little high, but not as high as the spellcaster classes. A little higher quest chance, but we'll talk about that with Ninja. Their starting stats and their alignment is what really kills Paladin off. Because you need to start not only with Warrior stats, pretty much, but you need 16 Charisma and 15 Dex. Which is insane. No class can get anywhere near that with starting stats without being a legacy character. And as far as skills go, you know, they're a little behind Warrior and everything, except for Perception. They do get spells, a couple of healing spells, so I mean that doesn't matter too much. And they get weapons at the same rate as Warriors. The only difference is they can't use axes. They can still use hammers. Paladin's not bad. Paladin fills the gap in Gnome and Elf. Because, again, they can't access Warrior, but if they're good, they can access Paladin. Honestly, you're only gonna see Paladins being Gnomes or Elves majority of the time, and surely because that's their best fighting class option, because they don't have access to Warrior. Outside of that, there's not really much reason to level in Paladin. Ninja. Ninjas get lower hit points, so they're not a great starting class. The quest parameter is 35, so they're by far the most likely class to get quested, which quests are awful. And experience parameter is 21, which is the highest of any non-spellcasting class. But their stats aren't terrible to join. I mean, 15 Dex, 13 Strength is the highest, and that's fairly reasonable, fairly easy to get to. The problem comes twofold. First of all, they can only be good or evil. They can't be neutral, It means they can't share party alignments with oppositely aligned characters. And second of all, they can only be humans and trolls. Those are the only races with access to ninja. That is what hurts ninja the most. Because ninja also gets weapons a little bit slower than warrior, I think. But they have several unique weapons, generally tending towards multiple swings. Ninjas are all about multiple swings. Ninjas get multiple swings. Let me show you this. Now this doesn't actually mean too much. This number, you think, oh, 8? You know, it's a little bit higher than 5. No, ninjas can naturally get up to 4 extra swings from class alone. Warriors, paladins, villains... Oh, wait. Yeah, warriors, paladins, villains, scavengers can only get 2. Ninjas can get 4. Ninjas have unique weapons, which only they can use, generally which have good damage modifiers, and give them a ton of extra swings. Ninja weapons are quite rare. Ninja weapons don't have fantastic damage modifiers on them. They're decent, but they're not fantastic. They're not as good as, like, the Avenger, the Dominator. They can use swords, but they can't use maces, hammers, or axes. Ninjas get access to Charm of Opening at a little faster rate than Nomads, but honestly it's still late enough that you'll only be able to cast it once or twice per run, and that's assuming you don't have other spellcasting classes. Ninja is a very interesting class. Ninja is honestly a great supplementary class for fighting, but to level ninja alone leaves a fair bit to be desired. Generally, you'll want to pair it with a spellcasting class, so they fill out a couple gaps in their arsenal. But I mean, their design, by having a lot of multiple swings, means they're clearing big hordes of monsters without spells. Oh well, ninjas are weird. Ninjas are cool, ninjas are weird. Villain. How do I put this delicately? Villain is one of the worst classes in the game, and it's only available to legacy characters. Okay, let's start at the top. Same experience as a ninja, similar hits as to a ninja. Stats: 14 intelligence, 14 wisdom, 15 strength, 16 dex. Already that's pushing it. Only evil aligned. What items can they use? They can use pretty similar to warriors in terms of items. They get them a little slower, I think, maybe at the same speed. They're kind of like paladins in terms of items they get. But villains get axes, not hammers. Paladins get hammers and maces. Villains don't get either of those, but they get axes. But if you look at what spells they get, we'll talk about this later, they get poison and leprosy, and I think maybe they get minor heal at some absurdly high level, which doesn't make sense. And fighting-wise, they're a little behind paladins. Yeah, they're actually significantly behind paladins in terms of critical hits. So they do get thieving ability. Yeah, they get higher thieving ability, and they get better backstab, but they're way behind in critical hits, and behind in fighting skill. A little bit better at multiple swings, but again, that's just a couple levels of drop in the water compared to a ninja. Really, the only reason you would play a villain is if you're playing an evil gnome. And that's the only reason, because that's the best fighting class an evil gnome has access to. That's the only reason you'd play a villain. Seeker. Seeker has location spells and the highest perception of any class. They have decent starting requirements, 13, 13, intelligence, wisdom, 13 dexterity. They level decently fast, acceptably fast. They don't really have any downsides, but they don't have any great upsides either, outside of their perception. Seeker is a great supplementary class for someone like a warrior. Heck, it's the reason why Giant Warrior Seeker is so good, because they have Seeker to use their spell points. But their one defining spellcasting trait, their location and movement spells, they get at the same rate as the wizard class, who gets majority of other classes' spells as well. So for spellcasting terms, you don't want to play a Seeker. For fighting terms, you don't really want to play a Seeker. Yeah. Seekers are alright, but if you're already doing the optimal leveling route, you have enough levels in Wizard that you generally don't need Seeker, unless you really want that extra perception. Yeah, that's about it. Thief. Fast leveling. They get practically no hit points, and their max level is 21 on getting Constitution bonus. Low requirements outside of Dex, but can only be neutral. Thieves get by far the fastest thieving ability, and they get Charm of Opening so early that a thief actually, their lowest, like, their minimum cost Charm of Opening is 3 spell points. If you want to get anywhere in the dungeon and open as many chests as you can, you will need a thief. Outside of their thieving ability, which is their defining trait, they're not that good. But, yeah, thieves aren't too bad, all things considered. They are exceedingly good. You will want one thief, but they're only good at that specific thing, really. Scavenger. If you can't have a thief, or if you can't be any fighting class, then a Scavenger is what you're stuck with. Scavenger is only useful if you're an Osiri, or another race alignment combo that doesn't have access to any other fighting guild, because they're the only way Osiris can get multiple swings. Or they're the only way that ogres can be not warriors. Outside of these, you'll never see a Scavenger. Mage. Mage is interesting. You never need a mage, but they're fun. They're the only class with access to charm spells. If you want to increase your confinement, if you want to store monsters for quests, if you just want to capture some companions or make some extra money, mages are pretty good. That said, the only other spells they get are, I think, the kill spells, the mind spells, and a couple healing and a couple resistances, I think. You know, some supplementary spells. They're good supplementary spellcasters, but if you want actual, like, raw power, go somewhere else. That somewhere else is the Sorcerer's Guild. Lowest questing parameter. Thank goodness. Sorcerers get elemental spells. Fire, lightning, cold, resistances. Get a sorcerer, if only for the resistances alone. They get resistances twice as fast and at half the cost as any other class. Just putting that out there. They're very reasonable to join in terms of stat requirements. And it doesn't take that long to get to a level where all your resistances don't cost terribly much to cast. Sorcerers are really good. Supplementary classes. You can even make it a major class if you want to cast super high level spells like Electrical Field or Burning Air at reasonable prices. Wizards. Once again, like Paladin, look at those starting stats, required stats. 18 intelligence, 18 wisdom. You will not be anywhere close to wizard unless you're a legacy character. 30 experience parameter, second only to healer. Wizards get most spells in the game. They actually get location and movement spells, which outside of Seeker, no one else gets. And they get them at about the same rate as the Seeker, so about the same cost. They also get damage spells, which only the healer generally gets. Mind and kill spells, which the mage normally gets. They don't get the sorcerer's damage spells, element spells, but they get their resistances, but they get them slower. And that's the thing about wizards, that they get all their spells slower than other classes, which means they cost more. So why would you level a wizard instead of a more focused mage? Max level 41. You know, sure, it might not look like much. AH2, MH2, what does that even matter? But this is the core of the optimal leveling route. Talk about that in another video because we've gone on for almost an hour. If you level your classes, your characters as warrior and then wizard with max constitution, that's basically the OLR in a nutshell, you will have many hit points, and by level 41 you'll have your movement spells at a very reasonable casting cost. Wizard's pretty good supplementary there. As far as being your main class though, honestly, you should probably look elsewhere, because they don't really have much that other mages don't. And last but not least, we have healer. If you do not have a healer, be prepared to spend a lot of money on healing items. If you do not have a healer, be prepared to go into wizard for damage spells, being neutral magic resistance spells, including but not limited to Word of Death. Only the wizard and healer get that, and healer gets it faster than wizard. Healer is the only class which can cast Restoration, the only class which casts Raise Dead and Resurrection, though you have items which can cast those. Healer's pretty good. Downside? First of all, you can only be neutral, and that limits what races can get you. But the biggest thing is that your experience parameter is 32. Healers are by far the slowest leveling class in the entire game. They're reasonable stats to join. They're very reasonable characters. They have decent spells, although pretty specific. You're gonna either have damage spells or leprosy, pretty much, but leprosy is a good spell for mid levels. Leprosy is a surprisingly good spell, and I'll talk about that later, probably. But they level so slowly, you're going to want them in the front of your party, and sheerly because of their massive experience parameter, Osiri healers do not work well. They work, but not well. Best healer is probably a dwarf. Or maybe a human. Maybe there's some other races there too, but dwarf healer is pretty good. Osiri healer is tempting because you can actually get Osiri healer with ability to cast minor heal without, I think, any tomes or potions. But later on you're going to have a hard time because they're going to require hundreds of thousands of experience to level up very quickly. You will generally want a healer in your party. You will generally want a thief in your party. You will generally not want them to be the same character. First of all, because you want to save spell points for healing and or Charm of Opening. But second of all, because that takes an insanely long time to level up. Thieves aren't bad, but the healers are bad to level up. So slow. But anyway, that's about it. That's the classes in a nutshell. And that's the races. What are my picks for good classes? Number 1, Warrior. If you have access to Warrior, start out as a Warrior. Be the Warrior. Number 2, Thief. Every party needs a Thief. I don't care who you are, every party will want a Thief. Number 3, Wizard, just because of maximum leveling, optimal leveling. Number 4, Healer. Healer's dang good. Healer, you will want a healer. But they level super slow, just be warned. Number 5, Sorcerer. Can't go wrong with cheap resistances. Number 6, Nomad. Honestly, Nomad, just getting items that quickly is great. And outside of that, it's really up to you. None of the classes are absolutely terrible, except for maybe Villain and Scavenger, but you're kind of forced, your hand's kind of forced with certain races, alignments. Ninjas and mages are not necessary, but they fill interesting niches. They're fun to play. Paladin's not bad. Paladin's like a supplementary warrior. Villain, I don't know. Villain just compares poorly to Paladin overall. But yeah, that's the classes. As for what race class combos work well, I'm just gonna wrap this up quickly because it's getting a little late in the video. Human, if you want to be a ninja, play a human. Because you get warrior, you get wizard, you get ninja. And honestly, I have a ninja sorcerer on my human. Allows me to cast my spell points as resistances, fight pretty well, cast whatever extra points I need as damaging spells. And when I run out of spell points, I still fight pretty dang well. Dwarf, warrior, and wizard, optimal leveling. Basically warrior and thief, or warrior and healer. Just solid classes, hard to go wrong with dwarf, warrior, thieves, and warrior healers. Try not to put thief and healer in the same class, because then you're leveling warrior and thief and healer, and that just takes forever. It can be done, but should it be done? Giant. If you have yet to experience the joy that is the Giant Warrior Seeker, stop this video, pick up the shareware version of Mordor if you don't have the full thing, load up a Giant Warrior Seeker, max your strength, max your constitution, and just go. You will not be disappointed. Osiri Thief gets a notable mention for being the highest dexterity and the easiest to access thief. Osiri Healer also gets a mention for being the easiest to access healer, but don't plan on keeping them around for very long afterwards, because you're going to want a human or dwarf healer so you don't spend years leveling. Those are my picks for some of my favorite race class combinations. Again, the game is designed so that pretty much any combination can work, in theory, but those are some of the best ones that I've noticed. If you have any comments, or if you want to tell me about something I totally forgot in this hour-long video, sorry about that, just let me know. Hit me up, leave a comment below, like and subscribe if you like the oh man, shelling out like that feels so weird. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. I really do, though. I've played this game for way too long, and it pains me when I see other people just not able to understand the game. Like, they might play it and they may or may not enjoy it. I mean, you can enjoy a game without being any good at it. Heck, it happens to me all the time. But the reason I'm making these videos is just so that the information's more accessible. I always leave a link to Dejenol.com in my description. It's a fantastic Mordor wiki/forum, which is where I found most of my information. But I figured I'd make these videos to just put the word out there, make things more accessible, help people to understand this game for what it is and how actually to play it. Because this is a pretty hard game, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I've been rambling for an hour, so I should probably actually do something productive today. But I've been Mithril Zenith, and I hope you've enjoyed Mordor the Depths of Dejenol Tips and Tricks. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.